Regular meeting. It is May 14th at 6 p.m. We are in the Bonneray Media Center. Will the treasurer please call the roll?
Mr. Dobbins.
Here.
Mrs. Etter.
Here.
Ms. Prouse.
Here.
Mrs. Decker.
Here.
Mr. Suchaki.
Here. 5 present, none absent. On behalf of the board, I would like to welcome all students, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's Board of Education meeting. The board values and encourages public comment on education issues. Anyone having an interest in the actions of the board may participate during the public comments portion of the meeting. And if so, please identify yourself on the sign-in sheet. And a copy of the board agenda is available on our website. At this point, please stand for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Section 3 of our agenda is recognition, and I'm going to turn it over to our treasurer to introduce our special guest.
Thank you, Mr. Suchaki. We have a special guest tonight, regional liaison with the Auditor State's Office. This is Jennifer Derlick. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
The light's on, you're good.
Okay. So thank you, Superintendent and Board, for allowing me to take a few minutes of your time today. Again, my name is Jen. I'm a regional liaison with State Auditor Keith Faber's office. So on behalf of Auditor Faber and the State Auditor's office, thank you again for letting me come here today. And the reason for me being here today is to congratulate Matt Muccio, the treasurer, and his staff for receiving a clean audit for fiscal year 2024. And that is an accomplishment. Our office audits about 6,000 entities each year, and only about 17% of those entities receive a clean audit. So on behalf of Auditor Faber and the State Auditor's Office, I'd like to congratulate Cuyahoga Heights Local School District and Matt on receiving a clean audit.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to say on the record, too, we have two outstanding superstars that really are the driver for everything that goes on in the treasurer's office. We have our assistant treasurer, Kathy Martin, and our payroll and HR specialist, Ulixa Rodriguez. They are the engine that makes everything go, and without them, this award does not come to be. So all the praise, goes to the two of them. So we're a team, as well as the Board of Education administration, but they are superstars. And then we can take a picture at this time if we want to pause it.
All of us?
All of us.
Oh, okay.
Boy.
Where do you want to do that? effort you and your team do. One thing we do not have to worry about is having our books balanced, every expense accounted for, and it is very much appreciated. So thank you, everyone. Okay, moving on to section 4, comments from the public, and we do have one person signed up. You have a maximum of 3 minutes. Mr. Martin.
Try to not take that much. I'm here mainly to thank the Board of Education, but also our administration. Congratulations to Matt and the staff on that board. But we just went through a very challenging testing cycle, and I want you guys to know how valuable it is to have a board that supports our students here and the resources you provide, not only to our administration, but to us as teachers, to give us the best possible chance for success. I think we got really good results, again, at least preliminarily. I talked to a lot of teachers at other schools, and sometimes I feel a little guilty because I do think we have some advantages here. Our administration does a really good job of making sure our kids get in the right class, in the right places, with the right support, but none of that could happen without the support of the board. I know you guys went through a lot to get that last levy passed. I want you to know it's appreciated. Being able to keep class sizes at a reasonable level is a really, really big deal to students. Students cannot get lost in our school system. Every student has a great opportunity for success. Many of them take advantage of it, which is why our scores are so high. But the support we get from the board and the community is the real reason why we have so much success here. We try to do our part as a teaching staff, but we're given a lot to work with, and we really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
And pass along from the board, we certainly appreciate everything you on the staff, especially in the classrooms, are doing.
Absolutely.
Making my job a lot easier, too. Okay, so moving on to section 5, presentations, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Young.
Yes, so our first presentation is by Ms. Pam Mead, our food service director. This is our annual report, required to do by law, but I think you actually enjoy doing this now. It's an opportunity for, well, I think the first year we did it, we were coming out of COVID, and we realized that we had to get this done in a hurry, and we were both a little flustered, but I think now we're at the point where I think you'll hear how proud she is of the food service program that we have developed here. She's extremely proud of her staff. They work so hard. I mean, there's such great quality people that care about the kids and the job that they do. Ms. Mead and Mrs. Jazanowski. Sorry, I was going to say Ms. Wendy. They work so hard to lead the team to ensure that we are completely legal and compliant, but also that our students receive everything that they need. So the requirements of your food service director has increased over the years. The number of, and Mr. Muccio can attest to this, the number of audits that have to be done to account for every aspect of food service, from competitive bidding to what you charge for a lunch, all the way down to the penny has to be accounted for, and Ms. Mead has been a professional at helping us do that. It's not an easy process, so thank you for what you do, and I know you'll do fantastic. I told her it's 5 to 10 minutes at tops, and she's ready to go.
This is going to be a short one this year, so, okay. Hi. It's nice to see everyone. Okay, so we'll do the review policy of 8500. School districts must adopt and enforce a nutrition standards policy that considers the requirements of Ohio Revised Code 3313.814 and governs the types of food and beverages that may be sold on the premises of its schools. Each school district must, in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 3313.84, designate staff to prepare an annual report on the district's or school's compliance with the nutrition standards. As required by Ohio Revised Code 3313.84, a copy of the school's district annual report must be uploaded in the Consolidated School Report Survey. Meal patterns. All meals offered must meet National School Lunch Program meal pattern component, quantity, and dietary specifications. Meal patterns emphasize fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and age-appropriate nutrition. Masonic partners help us ensure our district has a compliant nutrition program by creating menus, providing training, and help with auditing to stay within the NSLP guidelines. civil rights and special dietary needs. All team members complete annual civil rights training at the beginning of the school year. Display the non-discrimination statement on our website. We post the Justice for All posters in all school offices, and we continue to accommodate special dietary needs when supported with appropriate documentation. Food safety. Staff members are ServSafe certified by attending a workshop once every 4 years. Staff members attend a 6-hour training at the beginning of the school year with Sonic Partners. Team members have ServSafe certificates. They're on display in the kitchens. We have 2 health inspections per year, and they're conducted by the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, and they're submitted to ODE. It's ODEW now, I think. Yeah, I think so. By the Director of Food Service and posted on the service stations in the cafeteria. Production sheets are kept as records to track how much food should be prepared to help limit waste and record food temperatures. Principles of hazard analysis and control blend system are implemented with the intent of preventing foodborne illnesses and found in every recipe we have. Staff reviews the hazard plan and signs it as part of their training. Wellness. Allergen information and nutritional labels and EpiPens are in the cafeteria. We also came up with menu, little food cards. It'll say like pizza, and then it'll have like the allergens. So if it's wheat, it'll say wheat, or if it's milk, it'll say milk now. So we're trying to get the kids to notice that more, and I think it's helped our numbers a little bit because now they really know what's safe. And we can also print out and put on the door with the daily menu the allergen sheet for the daily menu. We do that for both buildings. And we will continue to implement the goals and standards included with the local wellness policy and comply with all requirements of the final rule. We do provide alternate meal options for students on a 504 plan at no charge as required by the student's primary health care provider where necessary. Carryover funds, student account transfers to the student is approved. Debts are collected per administrative guidelines. Lunch applications are accessible on our school's website under parent resources. We offer online applications, printable applications, and will send an application home upon the parent's request. Any items requested by the board are available by contacting the parent.
So, talk to us about the anticipated plans for a breakfast program next year at the elementary school.
Yes, we're pretty excited about this. I'm a big breakfast advocate. And we hope to have bagged breakfast for our students. So we can do a grab and go. We'll have an option A, option B. And it'll be on, of course, on a menu and on our website. And I'm hoping we're going to have K2 and 3 eat in the cafeteria, and then the upperclassmen at 3, 4, and 5, they are possibly going to eat in their classrooms because they're older. So I'm very excited for it. Yeah, you have
So again, so Ms. Meese does a fantastic job this year. I've gotten to work with her more closely. She's doing a great job with working with her consultants to make sure our website has all the requirements that we go on. Our website's pretty extensive and has links to a lot of fun stuff. She's been, again, exploring a lot of different options for the breakfast program coming up next school year. Seeing like what's the most efficient, what do kids like, all those things we consider. Both Mr. Young and I, now I've worked longer than Mr. Young did, had the opportunity to work in the cafeteria this year with the team, and just to see what they do, put everything together on a day-to-day basis is extensive. So they do a fantastic job. They've been short-staffed this year with some injuries and other life happenings of people. And the one Pam's like, hey, we really use another worker. I'm like, you do so good with what we have. So again, they really take pride in what they do, and it's just a fantastic team, and her leadership definitely is seen by us on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, in the project that we're going to do this summer, moving the current faculty lounge wall back and then purchasing new tables is going to allow us to have 3 grade levels in the cafeteria at one time as opposed to 2, which should shorten our lunch cycle during the day, but also allow for that breakfast program a little bit more efficiently. So some renovations taking place in elementary school, which is exciting.
I would just like to applaud the extra effort that you're doing with the wellness and all, on the allergen program, displaying that so that everybody knows. I think that's a really important component to, make sure that children aren't eating something that they shouldn't. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you. Allison Rose was the big inspiration. We do have Kelly Mecklenburg on our staff, so family and, so that was a big inspiration too. Now we feel it's a necessity.
Yes. One quick question. You mentioned carryover balances. What happens when a student graduates? I just checked my daughter's balance and I just thought about that.
On your request, I can transfer it to your daughter's account, or if it's over $10, the treasurer's office will issue a check.
Okay.
Wow,
I just thought about that.
splurge on that money.
Just reminded me when you said carryover. Just barely.
There you go. What you want to do then?
Okay.
Actually, we signed her sheet today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Aren't you glad you came today?
Yes. One more thing to do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pam. You did a
very
great
much.
job.
Okay. Continuing.
All right, yep. So the next presentation, this was a request by Mr. Muccio, almost last minute. We thought that it would be appropriate to talk about at least, and I'm going to give you the full form, I guess. I'd planned to do this in June because we knew we had the 5-year forecast, but because of some proposed legislation with House Bill 96, there are some concerns as Matt worked through his 5-year forecast, and some concerns that the careful planning that the BEST committee did this year on how we can finish out our first 100 years in style and prepare for the next 100 years. Some of that funding could be at risk depending on what happens. So I want to just go through this presentation in maybe 15 minutes at tops. What you see here on the screen, this is the goal of the BEST committee, and that's to fulfill the expectations of our belief, mission, and vision statements. As you recall, the BEST committee was established back in 2011, 2012 to inform the superintendent of different projects and objectives while trying to restore trust between the community and the school district as a result of the embezzlement that had happened prior. And just to connect to the award Mr. Muccio's office got, and I guess we as a district got, we're a long way from those particular days of concern and lack of trust when it comes to our finances. His office has done a tremendous job. It's not easy. It's not well understood, but you can see it's necessary. When only 17% of, what did she say, 6,000 organizations receive the type of rating they did. Now say that you did that 2 years in a row, I bet that number dips below 17%, and then go 3 years in a row, it dips below that. So it's really important that what that recognition symbolizes, and that shouldn't be lost in what the BEST committee was originally founded to be, and that was a mechanism to get community involvement and to restore trust in the school district. But our goal was to assess the entity of the entire facilities through the lens of our belief, mission, and vision statements. The belief statements we had edited back in 2021. They have not formally been adopted, which is why on the website you still see the 2019-2020 version. At some point we may want to look at accepting the recommendations of the BEST committee. This is the first time, I think, since before COVID that we started a series of meetings and actually ended with a finished product. So it's a huge accomplishment to the people who were on that committee. Our mission, of course, is that we provide a safe and secure, a nurturing learning environment that graduates students who are college and career ready, they're critical thinkers, they're culturally aware, and prepared to be citizens of the the 21st century. It's crazy to say the mid-21st century when you start thinking about our kindergarten kids, in 13 years, right? It's going to be 2038, right? 13 years is the 100th anniversary of this building. So, and again, that's surreal sitting in my position. I don't know that, I'm not saying I won't be working in 13 years, but I don't know in what capacity, because I'll be in my mid-60s by then. So it's really amazing to have people come together to say the work we are doing are for those kids sitting over there in those classrooms, the smallest kids, as well as the ones who are getting ready to walk across not stage anymore, but walk across the track and get their diplomas here in 3 weeks. So our vision is empowering students to reach new heights. You see this everywhere we go. And we've always talked about if our students are going to reach new heights, we ourselves have to reach new heights. And there are 6 pillars. There's the academics pillar, the safety, security, and facilities pillar, communication and community outreach pillar, advancement of student opportunities, enrollment, and then finances. This year we focused on safety, security, facilities, and finances. Those were the 2 main pillars that we focused on this year, and our work evolved as we went through our year. In September, we had our initial meeting. We talked about the purpose of the BEST committee, and we calibrated or recalibrated, depending on if this was your first time or if this was your 14th time attending BEST committees throughout the years. So what we wanted to do was establish group norms. We wanted to set the tone for continuous improvement that also fostered everybody having a voice, the use of data, the importance of long-term planning and keeping students at the center of everything that we were doing. When we got to October, we actually broke up into 2 groups. We looked at facilities and then we looked at safety, knowing that finances was always going to be behind the scenes. So we never really focused specifically on finances until we got towards the end and we were trying to put dollar amounts to the projects that we have. So we broke up into 2 groups. Mr. Burek facilitated the safety group downstairs. I brought the facilities group upstairs. And what emerged were 4 schools of thought when it came to the facilities. Do you knock the place down and start over again? Do you not do anything and just say we're going to fix it as we go without any type of long-term planning? And then do you do something in between? Do you consider maybe a bond issue to do a major renovation? Or do you look at the money you have, strategically spend it, and if a PI levy, like the 1 mill we just had, were necessary along the way to add another mill or 2 to the pot, then we would have the ability to do that strategically along the way. And we kind of let everybody share their opinions, and we wrote it on the board, and I thought it was fantastic. Mr. Shuchaki told me after that meeting, that didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. Remember, you were up here, you're like, wow, a lot of strong opinions that through my lens, emerged in 4 different buckets, 4 different themes. And that actually became the inspiration for what we did in December. Prior to that, though, I brought in Dr. Ted Caleres, who was the assistant superintendent here for 5 years, who is the current superintendent at Brooklyn and has gone through a bond issue campaign. And he talked about why did we go after a bond? Why did we go after the size of the bond we did? What exactly did we want to accomplish? How were we going to strategically approach it? And he came in, was able to give his perspective through his lens, knowing a little bit of our history too. And never saying that this was the way to go, but this is the way they went. And this is what that process looked like. And I thought that was very valuable to see how in-depth and how long-term that process was. He started that during the COVID year just to get it passed last year, and they're doing those renovations right now. So it took a long time to get there. In December, we took what came out of that October work group meeting, and we did a facilities decision matrix. We had a series of approximately 16 questions where individuals had to rate what the best option was based on what the question was related to facilities when you thought about let's do nothing other than, well, when it starts to leak, let's plug the leak, as opposed to let's have a plan to replace the roofs. We had the bond issue. We had the knock it down and start over. And then we had the PI along the way, just like I mentioned. And they went through and they completed a decision matrix for that. When we came back in January, we did a little bit of a tax budget review for people so they could start seeing how finances work. I gave them an update on the projects that we are doing. We talked about the hillside, we talked about the fire alarm, but we also talked about the results of the facilities options decision matrix. And we completed an natatorium decision matrix. Again, we had 4 different schools of thought that we just wanted an opinion. It didn't mean that we were going to, highest score didn't mean that one wins. The lowest score didn't mean you disregarded it. We just wanted to see what this small sample of people had to say. And when you're only talking 10 to 12 people, it's not necessarily representative of the greater whole, but it's a sample size. It's an important sample size. And I thought the makeup of the group was very vital to giving very diverse opinions. When we came back in February, we actually went over the results of the natatorium decision matrix, and we started talking about budgeting. We started talking about what we heard from the governor when it came to school finances, and some legislative concerns that were starting to emerge before we actually knew what they were going to look like. We were anticipating something was coming. And we started a capital improvement planning activity, and I got to give Mr. Muccio a ton of credit for this because he took the time to take all of our permanent improvement resources and organize them into spreadsheets that allowed people to plug in real numbers and watch how the money disappears, to come up with a strategy for how you have to distribute it, to determine you might need another funding source at this juncture in time. But the goal was, we went through fiscal year 39, which
We thought about doing 100 years. but
we did. We thought about 100
We pulled it
years, but
back.
we weren't really sure. Right, so we went to that destination, the end of that first 100 years of Cuyahoga Heights. Keeping in mind that we had already decided, and I'll show you the results here in a second, we were not going to knock the building down. It made absolutely no sense to start over. It cost you $77 million that we didn't even feel that we had the mechanism to raise that kind of money without some type of external effort. And we would be in 1/3 the size of the campus for the same number of students. We loved the history, the architecture, and as we started to work through this process in February, we realized we might actually be able to pull this thing off. And so when we came back in March, we started over. After everybody, it was really awkward, that February meeting. It's like, what number goes here, and how do you do this? And a lot of people were just talking. They were having the conversations. They were engaging in the work. And when we came back in March, they actually plugged the numbers in again, and they presented. And we had 4 groups, and each group got to present, and each group had a slightly different take on what this looked like. I thought it was a hugely meaningful activity. And then in April, we came together, and I reviewed everything. I said, this is what we're going to talk to the board about, okay? So as you go through your packet here that I've given you, you see the timeline, and then you get to the facilities decision matrices. So we were looking at major renovation, new construction, permanent improvement, which is just a PI levy strategically placed, or repair as needed. As the roof leaks, let's just start patching it as opposed to a long-term plan. And we looked through the lens of educational impact. What's the impact on our kids? The community impact. Is it going to create a burden? Is the community going to support it? Implementation. Are we going to have to bring everything to a stop in order to do this, or is it going to be easy to implement? And then what's the financial impact overall? And again, this was a small group, about a dozen people feeding the information. And as you can see, repair as you go with no plan was the loser. Let's not do what we've been doing through the perception of the committee, okay? We need to have a plan. We need to have a plan to renovate, new construct, permanent improvement. You'll see the recommendation is permanent improvement as needed, using our funds strategically as we have them, and should we need additional PI money at a given time, you ask for it. But if you don't need to ask for it, you don't ask for it. You saw that the major renovation ranked the highest, but to do a major renovation requires you to take out a loan, like a mortgage, that you're going to have to pay back over the next 37 and a half years, I think is how bonds work. Can we guarantee in 37 and a half years, based on the state of public ed, can we guarantee that we are here in our current form in 37 and a half years? Do you put that kind of burden on the community? And even though it ranked the highest, yeah, it sounds great. Everybody does construction projects in the summertime. How many construction projects are you going to be able to do? And a place like this, as you start knocking down walls and things like that, what else do you find that you have to replace that you didn't anticipate that's going to cost you more money? It just seemed a little risky. And so you'll see the overall recommendation is let's do permanent improvements as we go, and that's what you're going to see in this document. Next, we did the natatorium decision matrix, and we looked at a couple things. Do we decommission it, which means just essentially knock it down? Do we do minimal repairs? Do we renovate as a natatorium, and do we repurpose it like basketball gyms or something like that? And you can see that renovate is a clear winner. Renovate for what? That's a decision that's going to have to be made as a group beyond just the BEST committee. And I know we had talked about potentially surveying some of our village leadership, potentially looking at sharing resources in order to renovate, whatever that looks like. But renovate, people felt it has value. The building has value. But we had talked about that might be difficult for us to do on our own in the short term, which is where that community partnership or business partnership might come into play, which is very intriguing. So that was exciting to say. People are like, no, you've got the facility. Let's do something with the facility. What you do with it, that's a decision to be made at another time. Maybe that's a topic next year when we bring the BEST committee back. We dive a little bit deeper into that pool. But it was just really, really, really interesting, and I was glad to see that people value the facility. And there's conversations to be had, and there's opportunities there. So that was exciting. Renovate with support is what I put. What it looks like, we'll decide. The next thing we did, as I mentioned, we listed all the projects, the known projects that we know we have to do. We used GPD's assessment that they did back in 2019 and revamped in 2022, as well as some other things that have emerged, like a fire alarm, hillside stabilization. We started to list all these out as 1 to 5 year short-term needs versus mid-term needs versus long-term needs. And what we had people do, and if you go to there's a second document, it looks like spreadsheets, looks like a Matt Muccio document. These are the 4 spreadsheets that in the final meeting they went through and they started putting the numbers in to see how it all would last. And what we did is we took that feedback, kind of took the majority feedback and then some of the expertise that we currently have on our own staff, like expertise of Mr. Zerbola and his crew, expertise of Mr. Burek, Mr. Muccio. They are my expertise. I just sit back and listen and try to make it all happen. Just to get comprehensive thoughts and perspectives on this. And so what we had were 4 funds. We had our typical permanent improvement fund. Okay, so what's feeding into that? The charter steel tax incentive, the oil gas lease royalty, the Village of Cog Heights charter steel tax incentive, and then the new PI levy from March of 2024. And the way Matt organized it, it showed how much money gets put into that account every year through our collections. Looking below, we went in and we listed fire alarm system by Einheit, $603,735. We put that into the first line. We know that's happening in fiscal year 25. So when you put that $603,735 in, it subtracts from the grand total, looking at the bottom, at the very, very, very bottom of the page. That tells you what your ending balances are. So when we looked at the fire system, the gutter replacements in 2 buildings, the rehab of the natatorium, gym refinishing, the treasurer's office air conditioner. You guys got an air conditioner? Wow. Sewage pump replacements, boilers, cafeteria, flooring, PA system. Total expenses were $776,777, leaving us with $503,393 based on what we brought in that year. That gets carried over then to the next year. It goes into the pot for next year. And we did that. We went through like roof replacements. Okay, we had a couple big projects, but we know we have a lot of roof replacements. We just build in some money happening every year from fiscal year 27 on. If you go to the next sheet, that's our technology account. This is where things like Chromebooks and teacher laptops and television sets and things like that can come, is from this account. And so we went and we tried to allocate Chromebook replacement cycles and staff laptop replacement cycles, knowing these costs will go up over time, potentially. But we wanted to use today's numbers as best we can. We will update these as we go. You go to the third spreadsheet, this is our vehicle account. We were very fortunate to receive a grant that covered the cost, 4 buses for the price of 2. That, in a positive way, disrupted the vehicle replacement cycle that Mr. Muccio, myself, Mr. Zerbola, and then mechanic Joe Blados sat and developed a 10-year plan for our vehicle replacement, the vans, the buses, the golf carts, and so on. That saved us a tremendous amount of money. And you can see that we don't even have to purchase or even consider purchasing a bus until fiscal year 29, which is 2028. If we don't need the buses, because we have a great mechanic, we have a great bus washer, we have great drivers, we are storing inside heated environments, maybe we don't need that. And that money just gets pushed down along the way. Our final, this is our athletics facilities master plan. We're kind of repurposing this as long as we have the guaranteed money to replace the turf field, all right? You got a little bit of money to work with, and we want this to also be for safety upgrades because we really have no mechanism to address safety features. So for example, you'll see the hillside stabilization is put into there. That's a safety feature and it's connected to the football stadium. It made sense to go there. But if you look at fiscal year 26, which is next school year, we would be looking at an elementary office redesign. We feel like the traffic flow, the pattern of parents coming into that school can be improved with some renovations over there. We want to look at that. We want to look at the pod areas. Is there a way to better secure the pod areas in first and second grade, just based off of some questions and concerns that have come our way? It's not saying that we're going to do it, but we have the mechanism to do it, and if we do, this is what it looks like. The playground. We know that we've got a jungle gym over there that I think the insurance people say it needs replaced. The Board of Health says, no, it's fine. I don't know. Maybe we need to look at it in 2 years, replacing one of those playgrounds over there. So that's what came from the committee, which then when you look at the packet I gave you, going back to the packet, I organized this so that you could see on page 6, what are the known short-term priorities? Safety and security, facilities infrastructure, flipping the page, educational spaces, technology, and transportation. When is it slated to start? How long will it go? How much is it anticipated to cost? And what fund would we be pulling from? Which of those 4 spreadsheets do you want to see that number? Then we had our midterm. In the mid, the 5 to 10, we know we got a turf replacement. We know we got an elevator over at the elementary school that may need replaced, brought up to ADA compliance. We know our bathrooms may need to come up to ADA compliance. State law can change that and shift that up. That's okay. Van replacement, you'll see that in there. You go long term, there's another turf field replacement. And those are when they start. That's the initiation of those. So like we talked about the roofs, those actually start in, the short term. They start in fiscal year 26. So what you see in the last table, though, is those spreadsheets that I showed you in the presentation that these capital improvements are based on. This is those ending balances in fiscal year 39. That's important because of all the unknowns. We don't know what we're going to have to replace or remodel based on age, based on need, based on state law, based on wants, potentially. So it doesn't mean that, hey, we're going to have $4.5 million by 2039 in the permanent improvement, general permanent improvement account. Let's just go drop $4 million on something. That ending balance over 15 years is to ensure that along the way, should we have to move the PI money to another PI account, should we have to repair something that we didn't anticipate, there's money there to potentially do it. And the great thing about the plan that you have here, none of it shows us going to the taxpayers for any new money, which is always a last resort, a necessary resort, but you're not seeing it because we think, at least with what we know about, we have a good, solid plan in place for the next 15 years. I think that's going to come into play and be very important based on some of the legislative challenges that we may be facing that Mr. Muccio will talk more about later. So you got your board presentation. We're proceeding with our projects. We're finalizing what the priorities are for next year. That will kick off 25-26. We're going to continue to assess safety. We're going to continue to look at the natatorium. We're going to monitor closely the legislative developments. We know we've got this budget bill that's going to go into effect. It'll be going into effect June 30th. That will last for 2 years. So we have to keep watching because there's going to be a very different school funding mechanism on the other side of what's coming. That's almost a guarantee. Phase major renovations, establish replacement cycles, maintain fiscal responsibility. This is a working, dynamic document. So we want to, regardless of who's sitting in this chair, we want to make sure, or this seat here, or those seats out there, we want to make sure that this, as long as Cogite Schools continues, we keep evolving this plan. And we will just add fiscal year 40 to the other side of this next year. That's the goal. So I really want to applaud. I wish Mrs. Deal has been out. She had a procedure and she's been out. And she has the master list of all the people who participated. Some came one time, some came every time. I would like at some point to read off all those names so that we know who participated. But we couldn't have done this without the members of the BEST committee. They did outstanding work this year. It was exciting work. It's some of the best work I've been part of. I really feel like we've got a plan in place and really applaud the BEST committee. So,
Great feedback from them.
yeah, great, tremendous feedback. So that's my presentation. I'll turn it over to Mr. Muccio.
Can I ask that question?
Yes, please ask questions. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Definitely appreciate all the work that went into this and all of the thoughtfulness around both the emotional component of, maybe doing PI and also the financial impact of not doing a bond. I do want to ask, because these projects are pretty major over time, and we've had a few that are pretty major, and whether we feel like, from an admin perspective, we have the staff to be able to manage major projects like this over and over and over again. Because we're not talking about one major project, we are talking about many at a time. And I know that we are potentially a little constrained as is. So I'm just asking the question because I think these are big and they're important, and all of the other stuff we have to do also still has to get done.
Well, I was going to say two things. First, I really want to shut down. I'll be loud. It's my coach's voice. So, really acknowledge the work that Mr. Young did through this process. We've had a facilitator with previous BEST committees, and he kind of took on that role, saving us district money in that manner. And, again, he did a fantastic job keeping organizing throughout the whole process. So summer, with the projects going on, we'll get a sense to evaluate what we can, what we cannot do, as a team, present. Because again, as we went through this process, one of the underlying themes that came up is we can only do so many projects over every summer. So, working with our architect group, Mr. Zabolo's been doing a great job organizing a lot of these different vendors coming in and doing projects throughout the school year. So, again, I think right now, with the people that we have, we feel good for the challenge, and we'll touch base with you after the summertime and tell you really where we're at with that. But it's exciting, seeing movement with these things, getting the funding in place, passing the levy, and then doing all the work with the BEST committee, and really seeing how passionate people are about seeing their tax dollars at work throughout this process.
Yeah, it's an important point, and we want to be responsive to our staff. There are thresholds, tipping points, so we don't want to stretch ourselves too thin or overburden our staff unnecessarily. So that's why we have very frequent communications and meetings within our departments. It's a fair point.
I will say, having been on the BEST committee now since 2011, that this was an excellent year. This is probably the best year for the best, in terms of coming to viable solutions and directions, okay? Other than those first few years when you're just getting started. But the last couple of years, we were not quite as positive in terms of accomplishing things. And of course, COVID made that difficult too, as this year was. This year was truly excellent, and I think, Mr. Young, you had a major role in making that happen, Mr. Muccio as well. So thank you to both of you for the efforts you've put in to help this committee come up with a very realistic roadmap to the future. And I liked using 2038 as the end goal.
That's right.
I really like that. I just hope I'm still around to see those things, because I'll be a little older than my mid-60s when we get there. So that's it. That's all I had. So, Mr. Muccio, I think you're up next.
Yep, it's that time of year, and this may be the last five-year forecast. We don't know what's gonna happen with HB 96, because they may crop it from 5 years to 3 years. But what we're looking at now is our May 2025 five-year forecast. And what I have on the screen here is the forecast from November. And the ending number that we have down here, and I'll make it a little larger, is $4.2 million that we have at the bottom. And we can see on our five-year forecast that everybody has in front of them that the bottom line number is 2.7 million, in the very bottom right-hand corner. So what caused the drop of approximately $1.5 million? It comes to be primarily from our tax collections. So if you were to look at the five-year forecast at these numbers on what you have in front of you, you'll see 12.1. What they were here in the November forecast was 12.7. So the difference between 12.7 and 12.1 is about $600,000. So when we take two $600,000 amounts, that's 1.2 million, that's roughly the $1.5 million difference. So we went lower. And that is because, and I'll talk about it more, but I have this good example from another school that I wanted to highlight, because I did the exact same thing.
Sorry, so you're up here is the one from November.
Correct, this is
The one
November's.
we have is from now. It's not
Correct.
updated, so it's
Correct.
trying to show us the difference.
Oh, okay.
Took me a minute as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, this is November on the board. What you have in front of you is May of 25. November of 24, May of 25, just showing the difference. So this article is from a different school district in Ohio, Matthews, kind of funny. Can't get away from that name. But what I have highlighted here talks about a similar situation with property taxes. So Matthews Local Schools treasurer, Bradley, provided members of the board with copies of the district's financial forecast and explained to them that the property reevaluations increased by approximately 28%, and the district collected 5% less in that year. Now, the second paragraph goes on to explain that he spoke to the county auditor's office, which said that their collection rate was a little under that of previous years, which is why the district was underperforming in terms of tax revenue. He said he had forecasted a 91% collection rate, but it ended up more like 87%. So that's where we're at. I actually did call Cuyahoga County, the Budget Commission. I said, you know what, our tax collections are coming in lower than I had anticipated. And they said, yeah, Matt, that's across the board for school districts in the area as well as the metro parks. And they explained that, valuations went up, perhaps people are holding off on paying taxes while challenging their valuation. Tax bills went out a little bit later than what they usually do. And we're in a, fluid situation. So I'll talk more about property taxes as we look at the notes of the 5-year forecast, but I just wanted to highlight the biggest change that we see between November 2024's 5-year forecast and May 2025's 5-year forecast. So again, it's primarily due to a lower thought that we're going to collect less in property taxes. I hope not, but I'm just being very, very ultra reserved in my estimate
So
for that.
traditionally, or customarily, we've been collecting about what, 90% more, like 90,
Yep.
in the 95% or something like that it's
Yep.
been, right?
Yep.
So what are you saying now? How much less than that standard or
Low
the
90s,
customary?
around 90, low 90s. But I'm
Okay.
hopeful that the second half of the year will
Pick
even
up.
out, and we'll get to a different spot. But that came up, and I saw some other treasurers in the area too were talking about this, and everybody's, kind of pulling back their estimates. So I just wanted to reflect that in the May forecast.
So if you had to give a guesstimate,
Yep.
what would be the decrease in property tax revenue?
I thought the Cavs were going to win last night, and I was wrong about that. So my guesstimates might not be as good. But yeah, it could, and I'll talk about more because we'll see the actual collections. But it could be what this example was, 4%, 4 percentage points. So I just wanted to show, a school district in Ohio that came across, a situation that we're encountering too. And it really does, I think, drive from the valuation increase. But I don't know for sure. But the Budget Commission, when I did call them up, they did say that schools and metro parks, the collections came in lower than anticipated. So we're in the same boat with the other schools in the area, so.
One would think that would be relatively temporary, though. I mean, once people do all their protests and they get new billing, and maybe it'll be slightly less than anticipated, but I would think that it wouldn't be quite that drastic once we get to this next 6-month period. Would you agree? Hopefully, it won't be as bad?
Yes, yep, hopefully.
Okay.
I mean, another thing to keep into mind is the new administration that has tried to downsize and decrease. There's been a lot of job cuts at the beginning of this year, when people were just starting to pay their property taxes back in February. And that might have given some people some pause.
Yep, absolutely.
So we have to see too, like how the economy, how do we ride this economy?
Right.
It's little ups and downs that we've been experiencing in the past few months, and how this might affect property tax collections.
Yep, exactly. I'll go through this kind of quick because this is the update to the November forecast, but I just wanted to highlight some new things I put in the forecast as we go. So I have it on the screen, and everybody in front has a printed copy. So as I start going down, no change on the first page, no change on the second, table of contents. The next talk about the nature of the forecast, and I'm kind of breezing through it, so if I'm going too fast, just let me know. We talk about the budget process on page 4, page 5, really explains the different line items in the 5-year forecast. So that's page 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we get to the 5-year forecast embedded, if anybody ever loses it, into the notes, page 9. Then we start talking about our first line. So this is our property taxes. And I did update for the new row, 2024, and we can see 2 stars behind it for the reappraisal in that year. And we can see if we look at that, the amount increased was about 27%. So that's extremely high. That's similar to what we just read in that Article 2. So we can see the percentage increase over the years. Back in 18, 7%, and again, that was another reappraisal year. And 1%, 2%, 8%, and that was a triennial update in 2021. And then small in 22, 2%, 3% in 23, and then it jumps up 27% for those valuation increases for 2024. So our total assessed valuation went from 452 million altogether to 576 million. So that's the large significant jump. And at the bottom, I highlight just Class 1, which is residential, and Class 2, which is commercial. As we continue to go, the next page, nothing changed here. Next page, nothing really changed here. We have some good examples and definitions for, if anybody wants quick reference. This is new, so I wanted to input the 20 mil floor and what it looks like for everybody in Cuyahoga County. So at the very top box, I have how we come to our Class 1 and Class 2 rates. So our Class 1 is going to be in green that we see up there, 27.23, and our blue is going to be our Class 2 rate, which is 26.96. And I pulled all this data from the Ohio Department of Taxation. And we can see that we're going to kind of cheat because we're going to look at our next page here to see how those numbers come to be. But they're going to come from this section right here, tax year 24. So look at the ending number. That's 28.4 total for Class 1. And let's go back to this page. And that 28.4 is right down here. And then we subtract the PI, permanent improvement amount, which is going to be 0.81, and that's how we arrive at our green figure of 27.23, and it's the same for blue for Class 2, how we arrive at that. So those numbers right down there in parentheses are coming from the following page that we have, and they're coming from down here, right here, and right here. So those 4 numbers are taken back to this page to make up our ending numbers here for what our 20 mil floor amounts would be. And we're going to have one 20 mil floor rate for Class 1, which is residential, and another for Class 2. And we can see in Cuyahoga County, check it out, schools that are at the 20 mil floor would be Brooklyn for Class 1, Independence also for Class 1, Maple Heights for Class 1, and Parma for Class 1 for 2024. While North Royalton and Garfield Heights are for both Class 1 and Class 2. So when the valuations go up for those school districts, they kind of get all the extra added revenue. So they're ones that benefit from the 20 mil floor. Us, we passed the new levy, so it further, took us higher on it, away from being at that 20 mil floor. But as Matt can point out, the legislature, they're talking about eliminating the 20 mil floor, right? So, that would further complicate the budgets for all those schools, Independence, Parma, Maple Heights, North Royalton in a large way, Garfield Heights in a large way, and Brooklyn over there. Because they would no longer be able to recoup a lot of that extra revenue. Extra revenue I'm talking about is your valuation doesn't push your tax rate below a certain point. It leaves it there, so you kind of get any increase in valuation, you get to collect it at the full rate, not the effective rate. And I can jump into that more too, but I just wanted to point out where we were, where other schools in the county are, and the ones that do benefit from the 20 mil floor. But again, doesn't affect us, so just wanted to give some context when we hear about it and where we're at with the 20 mil floor. But I could always do more examples too as we go along the way of that. Going from page 13 to page 14 just talks about our actual collections. We have a lot going on right now. So we have our Class 1 and 2 in blue. We have our tax increment financing, our TIFs. If we all remember Mr. David Seed, one of our attorneys, coming out to a past board meeting to talk about our TIFs that we have for the district. Below that, in the purple, we have our permanent improvement levy revenue coming in. Below that, we have our public utility personal property amount, and then our homestead and credits that we see. So we're starting to add more rows, and we have more, it's getting more detailed in our collections that we have coming up. And then just to, I updated page 15, which just shows the tax rates that we see, and our tax rate has climbed to 43.7 with the March 24 levy, which was 8 overall, 7 operating, 1 PI. We were 35.7 on the page after, but now we're 43.7 in our tax rate. And when we compare it to the other schools in the state, we're still among the lowest in Cuyahoga County. They're us and Independence. Yep. And we're still far off away from Brooklyn, which would be the third school district that we see at 64. So our tax rate is still, among the lowest that we have. And then continuing to go on, we get to our roll-up page of our line, page 17. And what I did for 25 is actual, and then 26 and 27, we see that that amount coming in is 8.8. Now I got that figure on page 17 from the page just before it, right down here, 8.8. So I kind of went old school and tried to simplify it because we have a lot of things coming and going. So I looked at about a 92 collection percentage, and I know I'm kind of using, I'm guesstimating with a lot of this, so it's in the ballpark in essence, but I'm using a 92% collection rate for those 2 years. And then I bump it back up to 96%, 9.3 for the following years. So 8.8 for 26, 8.8 for 27, and then we bump it back up to 9.3 in those future years, thinking we're going to go from low 90s to where we've historically been. And I have those historical numbers here in the middle, 98, 97, 97, 97, 97, 96, 95, 97, 96. It's not till we see tax year 2014 that we were below 90% at 89. So, again, we're hopeful that it's a short-term complication, that it's going to rise. But again, this forecast just accounts for, that possibility as we go, just so we don't overextend ourselves. The next is our tangible personal property tax, or better called Public Utility Personal Property, acronym PUP, P-U-P-P. This would be our railroads, electric companies, natural gas, those types of entities that we have. Continuing on, we can see that the valuation climbed from 86 million in 23 to 93 million in 24. So that's a significant 8% increase approximately. So that went up very high. Continuing on to the next page, not too much other than I'm just highlighting those figures there on page 20. 21, again, these are all my numbers. We still remain third in Cuyahoga County, behind Bedford and Cleveland, regarding public utility personal property valuations. We're at 93 million on the bottom of page 21. Next up, Bedford is 110 million, and Cleveland's 625 million. We have our roll-up on page 23, and I just wanted to point out two things here. So I am being very reserved in the estimate. We're collecting 3.5 million in fiscal 25 right there, but I went down to about 3 million, so that's about $500,000 I went down just on the reserve. And what I'm saying is our tax rate, or excuse me, our valuation is not going to hopefully go below the 84 million valuation figure, which produces about 3 million. So, it's been climbing historically, 39 million to 46 to 58 to 67 to 73, 76, 77, 81, 84, 86, 93 million. I'm just not sure if it's a roller coaster that continues to go up, or we're at the hill and we eventually come down.
Is that why you were showing a deficit in fiscal year 26?
Correct. That's that 485,000. I just went a little more reserved, but we know there's money there in a bubble that, if we're collecting everything where we're at right now, if everything stays the same, that's 500,000. That's $2 million in the forecast in the bubble that we have right there for us. But again, it's just being more reserved with everything and just saying, I don't want to overextend ourselves as a school district. I'd rather say, I have a good assurance that we're going to collect $3 million, if the floor falls out. So we can plan accordingly and certify contracts and make projects according to that. If I kind of went to the 3.5 and things fell apart, but we had already committed to a lot of these projects, we could be looking at a very sticky situation. So I just wanted to kind of look at it through that lens and go. But again, we look at everything, we look at this twice a year, and we're constantly reviewing stuff month to month. So we're, looking at it as we go. Did want to point out that a major item of legislation that was recently passed in April of 25 by the Senate and House and sent to the governor is House Bill 15. This bill reduces the assessment rate on various tangible personal property, including electric generation, transmission and distribution, and pipeline property. This change only applies to property placed in service after the legislation's effective date, and these changes to assessment rates will ultimately increase the tax burden on Class 1 and 2 property taxpayers by reducing the overall property tax base. Potential ramifications could include, that property valuation loss in TPP and internal loss of revenue, which means taxpayers would have the shift to cover that revenue loss. So HB 920 means all of our levies collect the same amount, right? So if we pass a levy 20 years ago and it's generating $1 million, we collect that same $1 million nowadays. And it's made up of Class 1, 2, and public utility personal property paying that $1 million. So if anything happens with the legislature and what they're affecting valuation on for PUP, if that revenue goes down in that 1 million line that we have, it's still going to have to get made up by Class 1 or Class 2. So if one drops, the others have to rise to still get the $1 million generated for that levy for HB 920. So there's a lot going on with the legislature. Continuing to move on, we have our state aid. Not much changed here, so I kept it relatively the same. Page 28, page 29. Page 29 begins our restricted aid. Again, not much change there. 30, 31, 32 has our roll-up. Nothing really changed there. 33 begins our state share of local property taxes, which is our homestead and credits. I do want to point to everybody's attention on page 34. This is new. And Mr. Young and myself actually came up with the same numbers, and we didn't even know until we broke it out, and we're like, well, let's see what we each calculated. But this has a cumulative loss total here in this column now. So it means since 2012, and our TPP reimbursement amount keeps dropping from 3.6 to 3.3, 3.3, eventually 3,091,000, 2.7, 2.5, 2.3, 2.1, 1.9. All of that lost revenue, because we should be at 3.6, remember that. That cumulative total right now is sitting at $16.6 million that we've lost. And in another 5 or 10 years, in 2031, it comes to be $36 million is the cumulative lost revenue that we have from that TPP phase out. So that was another item for why we did go for the 2024 levy, because we know that we have this phase out that's affecting our finances. So, and we can see 16.6 million is a lot of money for our school district that we've lost from that piece of legislation. We have our roll-up on the following page, 35, nothing changed. 36 talks about all other income. And nothing else really changes in the forecast. We modify expenditures for increases in some new programs perhaps we'll have, or inflation. But everything else relatively stays the same in the forecast. Is there anything else anybody wants me to highlight or touch base on? I am hopeful if we look at page 39. for interest on investments, I am hopeful that we get to $1 million this year. I talked about that a couple months ago. It's still a game. I don't want to say game to myself, but it's still a driving factor, and I want to get us over $1 million combined for all of our interest on investments, which I think is outstanding for Cuyahoga Heights. We had $1 million we had more than $1 million in the previous year, and I think we're going to hit it this year. I do. I think in a couple months we'll be able to celebrate that. So,
As long as the state doesn't take away from us.
yes, yes. But that's our May update for the 5-year forecast in a nutshell. So,
Good work.
any questions or? Sounds good.
All right. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lucio.
Thank you. Good work.
All right, sorry, I have to sort out my paperwork here. Moving on to
Okay.
section, where are we?
6.
Section 7, section 6. Minutes.
Tonight I ask for items 6A, 7A through 7D for approval.
Okay, I entertain a motion for those treasurer's items.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Braus. Second. Second by Mr. Dobbins. Any discussion?
Just a few items tonight. We have a couple new vendors that we're adding, 4 to the school district. We have 3 that are small estimated amounts. We have David, who's a musician for our musical. We have Museum of Illusions for a field trip, and we have Cloverleaf Local Schools for a swim meet. And then we have a new item of software for special education. Mr. Burek, I'm not sure if you wanted to touch base on that item. That's the N2Y.
Yes, that's an update. They had consolidated companies, so we're just changing the name.
Got it. Gotcha. Purchase orders over 5,000, we just have 1, and this is for Savas Learning. Mr. Young, I'm not sure if you want to touch base on the digital license and work.
Yeah, we've been renewing licenses 1 year at a time. Our social studies and our Spanish licenses expire at the end of this year, so we're doing a 1-year rollover for those grade levels and subjects.
We have our donations for 7C. And we have 3 very, very generous donations that we want to highlight and thank. The first one is Carr Brothers Team. That's for concrete for the foundation for the memorial honoring Officer Jacob Durbin. You have number 2, which is Valley View Cement. That's labor for the base of the memorial honoring Officer Jacob Durbin. And then we have number 3, Mr. Glenn and Mrs. Carol Schroeder. That's for the Michael Wright Scholarship Fund. That is $600 that we have. So we thank all of those donations that we recognize tonight. And then we have the approval of the forecast that we just reviewed.
Okay, very good. Any other discussion on treasurer's business? Questions, so forth?
I just wanted to echo some of Mr. Young and other sentiments about the gratitude that we have to Valley View Cement and Carr Brothers for the wonderful work they did setting up the memorial for Mr. Durbin, Officer Durbin. I've been following the emails that Mr. Young has been sending us, and seeing this tonight in black and white, sure, cement, pardon the pun, certainly solidifies that, my views. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Again, it's just another testament to the generosity of our business partners in our community. We need to be really appreciative and grateful. Acknowledge them.
Okay, so where are we? Section 8?
We have to vote.
The vote.
We have do we have a motion?
Yep.
Okay,
Ms. Prouse? Aye. Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki?
aye, motion passes 5-0. Section 9, any other discussion on the treasurer, from the treasurer?
Yeah, this is about HB 96, and Mr. Young, do you want to start it with our Friday meeting that we have with Mr.?
Sure,
Supervisor?
last Friday, we went to Mentor High School, and we met with Senator Serino with a group of superintendent and treasurers that reside in his district. Some key themes that came up, he talked about property tax pressures process dynamics that we're going to be changing. He talked about his desire for local control and transparency, although he said that schools don't do a good enough job of being transparent about what their money's going. So we have uneducated voters, so to speak, on tax issues, voting for levies that maybe they would do otherwise. Again, I think it's an overgeneralization. And then he talked about performance expectations, which got mixed reviews. You know, you're talking about high-achieving school districts, community expectations to perform well, and resources that go into that. But then somebody from a low-performing district talked about their median income's $32,000, that they already have students walking through the door at a disadvantage. Has nothing to do with their learning. It has to do with the home environment, and he just treasurer cautioned on things like that. But he said that the claimed, this is fake statistics, he's getting 10 times more pressure from the taxpayers to relieve their property tax burden than he's getting from school districts saying leave the cash carryover alone. But I thought it was a good meeting. I wouldn't call it a great meeting. He did a lot of talking. We did a lot of sitting and listening. Mr. Muccio did ask a question about local control. He did a very nice job of containing himself, because when Mr. Muccio starts going with some of his statistics, you can see he gets that look in his eye like, now hold on, I have another question for you. But he was very respectful. But it sounds like there's going to be a cash carryover balance percentage. What that looks like, whether it's a minimum, whether there's a minimum and a maximum, whether boards of education have the ability to set that, whether it's going to be set into law, we don't know exactly, but at least I think they're listening, and something's going to happen. I think the number's going to change. I just don't know how much it's going to change. I do have a meeting coming up. I got invited today. Our House of Representative member invited me and other superintendents in his district, Representative Michael Robinson Jr., to Solon High School a week from this Friday for an hour-and-a-half meet and greet breakfast at Solon High School. So I'll be planning to attend that too, because whatever the Senate comes up with has to go back to the House for the House to review. And we need advocates there too. So into politics more than I like or ever thought I was going to be, but it's good. It's good to advocate for our school district.
And this was the email I shared with everybody from that meeting with Senator Serino. And just wanted to show a few other small items before we move on. This is a handout here from Dr. Howard Fleeter. And it's actually from his testimony today, May 14th, that he submitted. And I wanted to highlight on the second page behind his thoughts on the 30% cash balance cap. He goes, while the concerns raised above about the future of school foundation formula are certainly of fundamental importance, this is not, however, the item of greatest concern for Ohio school districts contained in the House version of the fiscal 26-27 budget. The House budget includes a provision which would direct county budget commissions to reduce property tax millage rates by the amount necessary to reduce school property taxes by the dollar amount equal to the excess of district's cash balance beyond a maximum of 30% of operating expenditures. So to him, in his opinion, he is saying that this is the greatest concern that he sees in the House version of the 26-27 budget, which is the 30% cash balance cap that we see. So I just wanted to point that out, that, you know, again, to us, it's the greatest concern, and also with Dr. Howard Fleeter, you know, I believe he feels the same way, if I'm reading that right.
You know, with the Fair School Funding Formula, we get $900,000 from the state. But to go to the 30% cash carryover, we get back nearly $10 million. It's not even close to what's more important for Cuyahoga. And we're not the only ones in that boat.
Say that again, the amount we're getting and the amount they wanted.
The amount we get from the state per the Fair School Funding Formula is $900,000, the third lowest in the state of Ohio. Kelly's Island and Put-in-Bay get less. I don't think they have 50 kids between the two of them. All right, we're sitting at just under 800 kids. We'll get a slight increase of $900,000, but based on the fall 5-year forecast, if they use fiscal 25, which is this year, we were at about 78.9% cash carryover, which translates to $9.9 million. So when we talk about the projects that we went through with the capital improvement plan, as well as just operating, this is our community expects a levy cycle once ever you put in a number for me. 10 years?
12, yeah.
12 years?
Yeah, it's true.
Mhm.
This
About
takes
that.
you to a levy cycle of every 2 years. And some feel that that's the right thing to do. Ask for money every other year and only take what you need incrementally. But when you have an 85, 87-year-old complex, you're number 600 out of 609 on the OFCC list to receive funding from the state to repair your facilities. When you receive the third lowest, from the state of Ohio through the Fair School Funding Formula, that is a significant hit to this school district and this community. So it's of concern. And keep in mind, approximately 70% of our funds come from local share. It will hit us bigger, but of that, 75% come from businesses. Only 25% come from the taxpayers.
Right.
So that's not all going back to the taxpayers that are our residents. There's a huge business component to it as well. So it's interesting. We're not the lowest. There are some well over 100%, but I agree. This is more significant than anything for us.
And Dr. Fleeter's report I have here at the admin content, so if anybody's interested, that full report's here, as well as the Senator Serino type-up. And then I have two other attachments I just wanted to highlight. The first one is the cash balance report. If you were to open that, you would see, I did misspell Cuyahoga with an extra A, so just forget that. I caught that too late. But what I did is I was able to pool all of these schools in the state of Ohio, and I isolated Cuyahoga, Lake, and Summit. But let's just take a look at Cuyahoga. And we can see the cash as a percentage of expenses for 12 fiscal years that I have in here. And it can really give the picture of how often schools operate at 30% or below. Bay Village right here, they've consistently been above 30%. Beechwood, look at Beechwood, the same. Bedford, kind of hit or miss. Berea, kind of operating lower than that. Brecksville, above for the most part. Brooklyn, Chagrin Falls, and we're going to get to our school right after Cleveland, and we can see ours. For 24, we were at our 97.6, and we can see what historically for the past 12 or so years where we've been. So we've been as low as 7.9 back in 2012. To 12%, to 29, to 46, 57. So that's our slow move up of saving money every year to have that surplus.
And 12 years ago, that's when the new tax, that was the tax 12 years ago. Well, we went from that 7.9 to 12%.
Yep.
Probably.
But I just wanted to give a picture of, just exactly how difficult it's going to be for a lot of these schools. Fairview Park, I mean, they're a clone of us, if you want to say. I mean, they're operating in the high 90s right now, and we're similar. It's going to be a complete shift in mindset because a lot of these schools, for a lot of different counties, let me go to Summit, Barberton, where they're at, Copley Fairlawn, let me go down there. They're close to a clone of us as well. A lot of these schools have not consistently, over years, operated at a margin of 30% or below. So this will be a fundamental change for every school district in how they operate. But I just wanted to give that perspective just to see that this isn't something that everybody's just been doing for a long time. The schools that have been operating under that, Cleveland, they've been cutting and putting levies on and getting rid of programs. So I just thought it was interesting to see. And the last item I have here is a message from our legal counsel that I had forwarded to everybody, just talking about transfers. We know that some schools are talking about transfers right now, perhaps maybe from the general fund to a permanent improvement fund or a special revenue fund for capital projects. Because of this potential loss in funding by the 30% cash carryover balance hit. Our legal counsel came out and provided guidance to caution treasurers on extreme moves now. So I just wanted to share that, verbiage that we have here from our legal counsel to kind of take a wait-and-see approach instead of doing it because, we don't want to, if there is a cap, will they look at our balance before all these transfers have occurred? In other words, will they not let districts, shift money around like many are now trying to do? So that's just something where I wanted to get a lot of different perspectives, and I'm talking with other treasurers and seeing what they're doing. But I think our best bet, kind of taking all of that together in conjunction with our legal counsel, is maybe take a wait-and-see approach at this current juncture. Because
Quick question, is
Yeah.
the transfer different than a spend?
Well, once we do it, so let's say we have our general fund, we're looking at it here. Once we take, a certain amount out of there and we put it to our permanent improvement fund, we can't really move it back. So once we hit the button to do that, then it's there. And then we're on, we're on the map to go for a general fund levy for our operating expenditures. Very, very, it accelerates it. So any amount that we transfer here, so if we're thinking the state's gonna come in and potentially take $9.9 million, Mr. Young was talking about, and we're thinking, well, we have capital improvements that we need cash for that. We're gonna take it from the general fund, so the state essentially doesn't take it and transfer it over to the permanent improvement fund. It's kind of twofold. What this email is saying is that perhaps, they'll look at your balance before any of those transfers occurred and say, you still owe $9.9 million, even though you transferred it. So that could be a hit right there. And then the double hit would be, we transferred it from the general fund, now we need a general fund levy, even though our PI fund is healthy. So that's where we don't know. It's still an unknown, a lot of this stuff. But that's why, our legal counsel is saying that he's cautioning treasurers from making extreme moves now, because you can't really undo that. And if we were, then we would, drastically accelerate the need for a general fund levy. So, we're trying our, to look at all angles of this and talk to as many, entities that are out there as possible, and we're going to continue to keep an eye on that. But there's just a lot of unknowns that everybody's encountering right now. So some schools are making transfers. I do know of a couple that have occurred right now. But I just know that accelerates their need from their general fund once they do that. And it's not something that you can just really reverse out and say, I need a do-over because the 30% didn't come into play. So it's just something we have to keep our focus on, and we are. So.
Right, I'm gonna ask probably a very strange question. I'm gonna ask it anyway, because that's just the way I am.
Definitely.
So what if we said, if this goes through, okay, this is still not a done deal, they're still talking back and forth, their legislators are still trying to figure this all out, and hopefully someone will have, we'll see what a ridiculous idea this is. But what if, this were to happen? What if we went to the state and said, hey, forget about that $900,000 that you want to give us in state funding. Just keep it. And then that would then necessitate the fact that you can't take the $10 million from us. I mean, you're saying, we don't want your money, and don't take ours.
Right.
We'll function without the state money.
Right.
Could that ever be a possibility?
Everything.
If they pass it, we'd have to put that into the law. the same thing. I'd rather you just keep your money and leave us alone. But I don't think that's an option. You have to remember that there is also the movement to decrease the public school footprint in Ohio. And so if you strain the system and the voters decide not to pass your levies and you have to make the appropriate cuts, then your performance starts to drop. As your performance drops, there's also bills out there that says that once you hit certain performance levels for so many years, you will have to merge with other school districts. Send your kids to those buildings, which makes your buildings now available to a private entity or a charter school to purchase for privatized education. So the state legislature has been playing this game for a decade, and everybody else is just now catching up to it. So if you're going to continue to play this game, you're going to lose this game because they're so far ahead. And when they talked through this the other day, Senator Serino, you can hear some of those things. So you got to start playing a different game on the other side. And, you know, we certainly don't want this because of the unpredictable nature of what can happen, but there's also there's almost a feeling that let's just let it all go through. And let's let every school district in Ohio have to go to their taxpayers every 2 years. You're going to upset your voting base now. If you upset your voting base, you're not going to get elected. So at some point, there's going to have to be the tipping point that says, fine, let's just go.
But the people won't see that it's the legislators that are in Columbus. They're going to see that it's here, the local. It's going to go back to the district. They're not going to put the blame on them. They won't understand that to know that.
Well, what happens to the property values when your school district starts to fail? They go down. So when you start hitting people with their long-term investment of their home values and their property values that they either were going to sell and use that money or were going to pass on, you're not going to be passing on a very attractive product. So there are long-term ramifications of all this. The problem is we have very short-term goals, instant gratification type of society that we're in now because of the infinite number of factors.
I don't even see how it could even be constitutional.
But Matt brought that up at
These
the
are-
meeting. They're voted
these are
on levies,
property
yes.
taxes on the county level. And then, yet, it's the state that wants to put their hands on it.
That was actually the question I asked Senator Serino. I said, how do you reconcile the Senate, working with the House, governor, as well as, local control? And then he asked, what do you mean by local control? And I said, local control in regards to
Will the people.
school boards, vote to place levies on the ballot. And those levies are either voted yes or no by the community, by majority rule. And effectively what the legislature in Columbus is doing is overturning that will of local control. And then, as Matt was saying, what was Senator Serino?
He says there are concerns about transparency of the school districts by people in the legislature. So they don't feel that we are transparent enough when we do go on the ballot as to why we need to. And I'm not saying that that may not be true in some places, but I know it seems like pretty heavy-handed. The truth of the matter is they want to give tax breaks to folks, and they need to account for some of the cuts that they're making. They need to fund it somehow, and they see this pot of money. They view it as a rainy day fund for schools, which it's anything but. This is just called good financial fiscal planning.
I don't know how they can say we're not transparent. What they're doing doesn't seem to be very transparent. Because they're gonna take these huge amount of monies from districts, and where's the money going? And how is it going to eventually be a tax relief to Joe and Joanne, a taxpayer? How?
And you just sent your auditors in here, your state auditors, looked through all of our books for days, and auditor awards for years in a row. Look at whatever you want to look at.
Clean
Exactly.
audit.
Yeah, it's on the website. Yeah, it's on the website.
This is so transparent.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
You give your
That's a ridiculous statement.
$8,000 to your non-public of our taxpayer money. I don't think they get audited, do they? Talk about about non-transparency. It's a lot more than we get. Anyway, okay.
So I have a couple of questions for Mr. Young and Mr. Muccio, probably. You did a nice job presenting to us the best committee's work this year, and I thank them for their work and your work as well. And it's a very nice document that kind of puts us on what I understand to be like a 15-year time horizon, including funding sources. And I'm just curious to know whether these potential changes that the legislature is considering, whether those have been included in this document, or whether we would, if they are adopted, whether we would need to revise this document further.
So the cash carryover is only going after general fund money. So any money that's in PI or is set to go into PI is untouchable
Okay.
by this.
Good.
Same with bonds. If you had a bond issue, it's untouchable. It's only general fund money. So it's the utilities to turn on the lights, it's the resources, the classroom instruction piece, the salaries, the benefits, things like that would take the hit. But not the PI piece. But if you ever needed to move money over to PI because you did have an emergency and you wanted to move a substantial amount over for a project, you don't have as big of a fund now to transfer over. And by doing that, again, you're going to go back to the taxpayer sooner.
So to circumvent that, would you then only go for permanent improvement levies and no general operating levies?
You can't move money from PI to general, so if it's not in the general, you can't spend it on operating, so you can't do that, right?
So this forecast then is basically predicated on the use of future revenues from non-general fund sources. So it's fairly unchangeable, so to speak?
Correct. We
At
think-
least based on what we know.
Right, based on what we know, and unless there's something, and devil's in the details with the
Of course.
legislature of Columbus, but as of now, our reasonable best guess is that none of those revenue sources for those 4 accounts, 3 would be in our permanent improvement fund, the 4th is our billboard account that we negotiated with them for that turf field replacement maybe a year ago, that none of those 4 would be impacted by legislation. Therefore, we're safe there. Where we wouldn't, where we would be on par with every other school is operating in that 30% cap margin. And we would be penalized more so than a lot of other schools, us in Fairview Park and Brooklyn and Strongsville, because we are schools that, as of now, have a high cash carryover balance. We're at 97 point something percent, right? So not all schools would be penalized. We would be under how they have it written.
That kind of touches upon my other question, and that is mostly to Mr. Young then. Some districts have, as I understand it, have issued communiques basically to their district residents, alerting them to the significance of this proposed legislation. I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are on the merits of us doing something similar.
I mean, we have developed communication that could go out. It's what's the best mechanism. Because it's a balance between you want to inform people about what your concerns are, but you have to be careful about putting pressure on people to contact your state legislature. It's a balancing act, and that's really something I was going to talk about during my discussionary section as to whether you wanted to spend the money to send out an actual physical copy of the concerns, or if that should just go into my weekly newsletter as concerns from the, superintendent's desk. That way it's based on what Mr. Muccio and I have put together from all the literature we receive, the lobbyist meetings that we go to, the in-person meetings that we've been part of, looking at the numbers. maybe it's just about this is the information. If you feel compelled to contact somebody, here's how you go about doing that. But we just want to let you know that if this goes through in its current form, this is what you can expect.
And I think that can be a healthy exercise, but I will also note that you were, you let us know this evening that it's quite possible that the cap could change and could actually be increased by some amount, which would change somewhat of the dynamics of what we've been discussing.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully.
It's just been a really, we were coached about how to speak with the senator last week. Because if we come across and we're attacking, we're insulting,
Of course.
we're unnecessarily defensive, there's nothing that prevents them from going back to 25%, which was the original proposal, because they can. They have a supermajority. The governor could not even veto it. So that's where I talked about the game has been played for a long time right now by the people that are in charge in Columbus, and we are now negotiating against ourselves. Do you want the fair school funding or do you want the cap? Well, we want fair school funding and we don't want the cap. So then you're greedy schools when we want to give taxpayer money back. How did we get here?
Right.
You know, it's so interesting. This is my 30th year in the profession, and this is, I always thought public education would last forever, and I don't know that it does. But I'm prepared to evolve and as we need to, and ensure that as long as we need to, we're going to be viable, sustainable, and relevant. So.
I look forward to your comments later on. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion from the treasurer's business?
Thank you, that's all.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Muccio. Moving on to superintendent's business, sections 10 through 14.
Okay, on the consent agenda, I have items 10A and B, items 11A, B, and C, 12A, 13A and B, 14A, B, C, and D for consideration.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for those items, please.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Dobbins.
Second.
I'm sorry, was that Ms. Etter? Second by Ms. Etter. Discussion.
Okay, 10A, this is the approval of tuition adjustment for our district nurse, the PSI employee. We have that built into our negotiated agreements for Chat and Chase. We have done this for other employees. We did something similar for Mrs. Howard back in 2022, and this is an extension of that practice. 10B, this is an updated class of 2025 list. We had one student who was a grade 23 student that was left off the list. So this is a fully updated list. I don't anticipate there's any more graduates being added here. Looking forward to this here in a couple weeks.
Okay, do I have another diploma to sign, by the way? Or was it already in the pack?
Yeah, we're going to check on that one because I haven't signed it
Crossed
either.
my mind while we're talking about it.
Yeah. Item 11A, so Mr. Garish is here with his wife. This is the approval of employment for our athletic and activities director for a period of 2 years. Authorizes and directs the superintendent treasurer to execute a contract with Mr. Garish upon such terms and conditions are agreed upon by the parties. In addition, we're recommending up to 80 hours of transition time. We went to hours instead of days. It's equivalent to 10 days because he's currently under contract with Cardinal Schools.
Okay.
And as we know, you can't work for two entities simultaneously, so we know that he's not on a 260 contract, and we'll have some time that he could stop over with some transition work. But it was a pretty rigorous process facilitated by Mr. Burek. We had several rounds. We had coaches involved. We had administrative assistants as well as administrators involved. And Mr. Garish, who's had multiple experiences in teaching, coaching, but more importantly, in administrative roles, Brunswick, Buckeye, Highland, Parma, and Cardinal Schools.
Wow.
So he's been, that experience of leading buildings, student management, coupled with his experience in coaching and teaching, before he became an administrator, was extremely valuable to our small team. Really came across as being passionate about building relationships with students, building relationships with the coaches, the staff, and their families. Being visible is important. I hope that was okay with you, that he's visible, which means he's not home cutting grass very often. But really came across as really genuine about being a positive change agent, not change for the sake of change, but change based on necessity, feedback, collaboration, student involvement, doing what's best for that student athlete. And we've married the activities and the athletics back together again, because our students who are participating in the musical also are in athletic events. All right, and we want to make sure that that brings balance, and we are reaching a greater number of kids. If you recall, 2 years ago when we were talking about the levy, our students averaged 2.3 activities per kid back in 2022. Our students get involved. They get involved in multiple activities, and we're marrying that back together. We're going to miss Mr. Kelber. Mr. Kelber has brought stability. He's brought energy. He's brought student athlete and coach centered philosophies and mentalities that has been very positive for our school district. He's making the change for his career. We're very fortunate to have somebody who can come in, who can provide not just what Mr. Kelber did, but also bring that experience and expertise along the way. You have anything to say?
Just thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Looking forward to it. As we said, it was a rigorous process, and just every next interview that I had, I just met some really incredible people. And the message that the question I always ask is, tell me what you love about wherever you're talking about, right? So in this case, Kyle Heights. Everybody just kept saying the community, the people. Everybody comes together. I love that. I just absolutely love that. And reading through all of your mission statement, your vision statement, all things that I can get on board with that I'm already doing where I am and want to do that here. So I would say thank you for the opportunity. Really excited about it. Ready to get started. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Good.
What's your favorite sport?
Oh, man. My favorite sport to play is golf, which I used to be good at it, but I'm not anymore. I think my favorite sport when I coached, I was a head basketball coach for a long time, so now we have two daughters that are both coaching now. In fact, Sally and I were on our way to a basketball game one time when we're driving to one of our kids' games, and she goes, I thought we were done with this basketball. I'm like, we're never done. So,
Right.
it's just kind of stays in the family. So I'm just a sports fan in general. So and I've coached a lot of different things. So that's where that experience comes in. So.
Yeah, very good. Well, it's a little early. We haven't voted yet, but welcome.
Yeah.
That's right. Let's get through this part. 11B, this is for Ms. Anna Marie Palucci to come into our middle school. This replaces Mrs. Wilson's position. Ms. Palucci is currently at Warren City School District, where she teaches mathematics. She also has a science license. She brings youth and energy, athletics. She's been coaching soccer since 2021, which is fantastic. Appears to have really solid classroom management skills and some innovative ways of instructing that. The most important thing to me was that the two teachers in that grade level were passionate about the person we were bringing in, and they were both extremely passionate about Ms. Palucci. So I'm hoping she doesn't, obviously anybody can find another job between now and July 10th, but I'm locking her in. And it looks very solid. So you always worry this time of year. People can change their minds, but she looks like to be a fantastic addition to our staff at BA Step 3. Letter C, this is the reemployment of our certified staff annually after we go through the Ohio Teacher Evaluation process. After May 10th, Then you look at all those people that were on limited contracts, and you make decisions as to whether they qualify for a continuing contract. We have 4 people qualifying for a continuing contract, while I believe it's 16 others stay on a limited one-year contract for the 25-26 school year. 12A, we have the same approval, but this is for our classified staff. We go through the same process to look to see who is eligible for what contract. Some are continuing. We know there's a 1-2-2-2-2 process for these folks that mirror something very similar to the certified staff, so that you'll find that list. 13A, this is our monthly substitute teacher list that we approve. Does not appear to be any changes, but we still approve them 1 month at a time. Letter B, this is long-term substitute for the elementary school for Ms. Bailey Hedges. She has been in 2nd grade for the 2nd semester this year. We have at least 2 teachers next year, one in 5th grade out through October, another one in 4th grade that will be going out from mid to late October through the end of January. So to have somebody who's been teaching from the same similar resources, the Envisions with math and Wit and Wisdom with the reading, to be able to transfer that to 5th grade and 4th grade gives us some long-term stability. We've been very fortunate with our long-term subs, especially in the state-tested areas. So it's important that we invest in the most quality long-term subs we can, and I feel fortunate to have Bailey coming back next year with approval. And then 14, these are the agreements, contracts, memberships. We have A and B. This is with Summit Educational Service Center to continue the coaching services that we have been implementing over the last couple years. The first is for the mathematics. I believe there's going to be new state legislation coming around math improvement and monitoring plans, potential interventions in place, high quality instructional materials that are going to have to be adopted, so on and so forth. So met yesterday, Mr. Miller was in with the kindergarten team, and they had a fantastic day. They worked so hard, so purposefully, so intentionally, and Mr. Miller assured me that we are ahead of the game. We're ahead of where many other school districts are in making this transition to what's anticipated. We even have a master schedule at the elementary school built to provide math intervention already. So we've been very smart and strategic about this for 3 years. All right, everything is intentional to set us up for success. Letter B is just the literacy piece, continuing with a little bit more coaching there. Letter C is with Ohio Schools Council. It's an agreement for auction services that go through October. Mr. Burek, go ahead.
Yes, so, Mr. Muccio, Mr. Zabola, Mr. Hartman, myself met with representative from Ohio School Council, so to help us follow the law and dispose of equipment appropriately, meeting all regulations and requirements under the auditors of state. So we have some vehicles that we need to auction off, some furniture, some tech supplies. So we're just getting a process that we could be able to do this more regularly with guidance. There's a cost associated with the service, but it kind of gets deducted from what we brought in. Kind of there's a tiered amount of money that we'll make depending on how much we sell overall. So we're excited to do that.
Okay, and then letter D, this is the approval of an agreement with Neonet to provide some technology consultation services 1 day a week from effective May 5th all the way through 6/30/2025. It's going to be working really closely with Mr. Hartman, Mr. Diedrich, Mr. Burek to kind of do a performance audit to see where we are. I heard we're in great shape. I hear we are in great shape. Mr. Hartman and Mr. Diedrich have been doing a fantastic job.
Don Brocky
Yep.
is the person who's in here once a week, but we actually get the whole team. Our first meeting was with 5 people from Neonet, so they're checking back into the system. One of the major focuses of this person is really on cybersecurity and making sure that we have everything in place to be running most effectively, replacing certain infrastructure most efficiently, and again, leveraging the power of Neonet. We've already had a partnership with our projects over the years. It's really important junior teacher, he was doing double duty as an IT coordinator for the district, but he was very complimentary of the things that Mr. Hartman really put in place to help this audit process, helps evaluate what we're doing good and what things we can do better. So it's been a pretty good experience so far. And again, like he's enjoying the process because again, things are a mess that he's coming into. And that's a testament to what our guys have really done here over the past couple of months without having a tech director. A lot of great work's been done.
Very good. Thank you, Matt.
Those are the items.
Okay. Any further discussion on the superintendent's business? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Zetter. Ms. Prowse. Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Board business resolutions, not revolutions, resolution. A motion to approve attendance at the State of Schools Chamber of Commerce event, which took place this
Today?
afternoon. I'll make that motion. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dobbins. Any discussion? It was a very interesting event. I think Mr. Young did a fabulous job
You did.
on his presentation. Thank you very much.
It's always great to be able to, we're grateful that the chamber brings us together. Our community, the Independence community, we're more similar than we are different. And our businesses are a great connector for us. And to be able to sit in front of our representatives from our district and then local government leaders in a chamber of commerce, I thought we all complemented each other very well. I think you heard the importance of the ESC, the importance of the Career Center in both of our educational lives, and really thank the Chamber for making that effort to bring us together. It's great to brag about our students, our staff, and our communities.
Right. Yes, I enjoy those every year very much. Learn a lot, and again, thank you for everything you did. Are you leaving us? Thank you for being here. Sorry you had to sit so long before we got to you. Welcome, pleasure, welcome, thank you.
Probably learned more about school finance than you cared to.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah,
I did.
yeah,
Okay.
agenda 14, 16.
How's his last name? Garish.
Been
We gotta
pointed
vote.
out that I accidentally went over the top of one of the superintendent's section.
We have to vote.
Oh, I can
You wanna
comment
finish
when
the
we get
vote?
to the board comments. And just
Okay,
ask me
okay.
what I think. And
Okay, we'll
I don't have a lot, but I do have a couple things.
Okay, we'll
It's
put you
fine.
in under board comment. So I think we have a motion on the floor, so can we have a vote, please?
Mr. Souchaki.
Yes, aye?
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Zetter.
Aye.
Ms. Prowse. Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Now we'll move on to superintendent/board consent or board comments.
Yeah,
We'll
so you
start
brought up
with
the state of the
superintendent.
schools, which I was going to mention, so that was a great segue. I do want to reiterate what Mr. Martin said with the state test scores. We've gotten 3 of the 4 subjects back. English comes back next week. We're slightly above where we were last year. That's not an easy accomplishment. I really want to applaud our staff because I know how hard they work. I see it, I feel it, experience it, but I also know how serious our students take it overall. Like I really felt our kids take this seriously. I mean, I give them pep talks, I mean, just like it's a pep rally. But it's not about pressure. It's just about doing your best. Give your best effort, and a Cuyahoga Heights kid's best effort is better than most other places' best effort, and that's all we ever ask. And our staff, to motivate those kids, and the parents to support the kids and getting them here. We have like a 99.9%, what's the participation? That's the word, participation rate, which is huge. So very proud. English comes back next, I think it's next Wednesday, potentially Tuesday. I can't remember right now. So 21st. So it's next Wednesday. Speaking of next Wednesday, have you gotten a communication? You're my barometer. District track meet is next Wednesday. That's great because we have been communicating it. We started communicating it about 6 weeks early, right before spring break, so that people can start making plans. We are hosting the district track meet a week from today. We release middle school and high school around 11:20 and elementary school around 12:20, and staff shortly after 1 o'clock for the staff. Events start at 1:30. So we got to get people off the property as surrounding communities come in, and yep, got to go. It's a little thing that brings surrounding communities into our villages, and they get to see our facilities. They get to compete on our property. Our kids get a home meet in the first round of the playoffs. It's a really good thing, and I'm appreciative of Tim Skojan, yep, for having faith in us to host this meet. All right, so, because he's an Independence guy, but is a Coghites guy too, especially when it comes to district track meet. So that's fantastic. I mentioned already I'll be meeting with Representative Robinson Jr. next week. And then as far as the communication of House Bill 96, this is the time to decide how we want to proceed. Proceed with caution, with information. Do we want to wait another week? Because by the end of next week, I think that's strategically why we're meeting with Representative Robinson Jr., is by the end of next week into the beginning of the following week, we're going to get the Senate's version of House Bill 96, of the budget bill. And then there's going to be a 9-day period where they wheel and deal and arm wrestle the omnibus bill version. And then after that, again, through some subcommittees, it gets closer and closer to what the real version is going to be. It doesn't really get to the governor until June 25th. He's got 5 days to act. So I know the budget bill's gotten a lot of attention. There are other bills getting attention too, which is why every week I send the board the laundry list of other bills. Pay attention to the other bills. There are going to be some standalone bills. For example, I believe something passed today that bans cell phones in schools. All grades.
Really?
Even high school. Boy, that's going to be fun to enforce. Right? Fantastic. I mean, it's going to be a nightmare. but whatever. You know, we have policies in place and procedures in place and things in the handbook in place, and it seems to work overall for us here. But pay attention to the other bills, and we'll see what happens. But what would you like to do with the communication? What's your feedback? And then I'll take that, and Matt and I will take your lead on this as you represent the community.
I think my overall suggestion is probably to keep it digital, because by the time you write it, print it, mail it, it could be out of date. So just with how fast things move, I think that's
I think what I'm going to do is if I do that, I'm going to approach it as, this is what it looks like as of today. And here's what the impact is as of today. And as this evolves, we will go in and we will reassess how the impact on Coghites schools changes as we get closer and closer to the actual version. So we're going to tell the story as it develops so that people who are interested can read it. And I can put the contact information of our senator and our House of Representative member in there if they feel like they want to reach out.
Yeah.
That's their preference. We're certainly not forcing it. I'm not going to advocate for it. If you feel it's important.
Or even if maybe if you have more questions about it,
Yep.
I think that's a good idea.
Does that seem like a good balance? Strike a balance, Mr. Dobbins? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I've been pretty vocal on this point. So I do like the idea that you and Ms. Krause have just laid out, which is to lay it out as it presently is, tell the community what's going on, because it is important. No matter what happens, it's going to be consequential. And to get the word out in the community, and people can react or take that information under advisement and act in whatever way they think is appropriate. The other thing I was going to ask you is when the dust settles on all this, I'm curious to know, as a board member, whether you think that we as a district might see the need for a special meeting at some point to take some type of post-legislative action, but before it becomes effective. I'm not trying to give you more work. You've got
No,
plenty to do.
we have seen examples of other boards of education passing resolutions
Mhm.
in response to
Mhm.
some of the proposed changes. And I know that this year I joined the Akron Area School Superintendents Association, and that group drafted a resolution on behalf of that group, and I did add my name to that as saying I am in support of public schools, and I am support of fully funding the Fair School Funding Formula. I am in support of boards of education determining cash carryover balances, in favor of retaining the 20 mil floor for school districts that are on the floor that require that money in order to provide what they feel is a locally determined valuable education. So I did independently put my name to that. No Board of Education attachment, no treasurer's attachment, it's just my name as that group. I support that. Because it's a pro-public school initiative. But I think as we get closer and closer, then we may be looking at what would a resolution, potential resolution look like, even maybe some examples or some models, model resolutions that even OSBA might put out or BASA might put out, or other school districts, we could model that. If you feel that it's necessary, based on how that's going to affect us.
I think we got an email on one of those today, late today, suggesting both a board resolution and an individual, just send this to your legislator, with just your signature on it as well.
Yeah, you're going to have two opportunities, May 28th and then June 11. Now, there's going to be the 25th, of course, but by the 25th, it's pretty much going to be a done deal. I'll be on vacation that week. Mr. Burek is going to sit in for me. But from vacation, I'm going to be very curious as to what the governor does with that. So,
Yeah, I like those ideas. Mr. Suchaki talked about the board resolution, and Mr. Young, you did also. And in one of the Friday supplements that you sent to us, there was a document that was embedded that was prepared by Worthington Schools Board, and they went on record as a group, as opposed, I believe, expressing support for the Fair School Funding Formula, and I believe also expressed dissatisfaction with the 30% revenue cap, I believe. But that was a point in time, and that goes to your and Ms. Prouse's point about how this is a moving target to this point, and maybe it's better to just disclose.
and we haven't even
inform
talked
what
about
we
federal
know.
funding, right? We
No,
haven't
yeah,
talked about
change.
what federal funding could look like for us.
Yeah.
So that's another whole conversation.
Well, thank you for getting the word out to us, and I won't say any more. The other board members may have other comments.
Okay, I'll proceed with an electronic version. It kind of tells the story as of today, this is what we know. And we'll just keep people up to date if they're interested in this as well as others. I'll throw in the cell phone piece. It's always interesting to get people going.
Just getting some information out there so that, if this does come to pass, it doesn't become a surprise to everyone, People who really aren't in tune with what's really happening down at Columbus. I just had one more thing to do. I was in conversation with a longtime friend of mine who lives in Medina, who happens to know Representative Sharon Ray, which is District 66 in the Medina County area, happens to be a Republican, and she was saying that she's very pro-schools and very against this. So there's one advocate for us out there. Her name's Representative Sharon Ray.
Yeah, I know tonight, and I don't know if she attended tonight, but tonight the Medina County Superintendents are all hosting a community forum where they are all presenting in support of one another to the public. So I'm good friends with the Medina Superintendent, try to get some information on what that looks like. But I know Wadsworth, where I live, they were attending. Buckeye was attending. Cloverleaf, Medina, Brunswick, Black River, Highland is the other. I think I've named all the Medina County schools. So that's how they're responding. They're doing a superintendent and treasurer's community forum tonight in Medina.
Anything else on the superintendent side?
Tapping out.
Okay, board discussions. Am I in the right spot now? Okay, board discussion committee reports and comments.
The only thing I have is a follow-up to Mr. Young having given us his draft assessment. At some point, we'll need to
Yeah, at some point,
schedule
we
a
need to
time.
sit down. It's been a busy few weeks, at least for me, anyway, and I know Mr. Young's been busy too, because I've seen him every other day, I think, over the last week, at least. But it's time to do that. We need to look at our calendars and figure out when we can do. I'd rather do it as a special meeting, and we need Mr. Muccio's yet to do his self-evaluation. Do you have any idea when you might get a chance to get to that?
Yeah, when would you like it? End of this month or sooner?
End of the month, we'd have a special meeting, maybe the first or second week of June. Would that work out?
I am gone till June 1st to the 11th.
First through the 11th?
Yes.
Okay.
And we have a meeting on the
11th, which I don't want to make. My flight is getting in late now.
and then we also have a meeting on the 25th, right? And you're just saying you want to do it separately?
I think so, because they can go on for a while, and I don't want to cut short this important part of our business, because, we've been here for 4 hours and we're
Yeah.
getting tired, so.
Do we need to move
Are you saying the special meeting is for us to
11th?
prepare or to give the?
For us to prepare
Okay.
the evaluation, to review the self-evaluations and write our evaluation.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I could do the 18th if you wanted to meet in between the two.
So I'm pulling out my calendar now. Actually, June
They're
looks
gonna
pretty
make
good,
a
but then they
6
all
o'clock
look good a couple of weeks before the month hits.
Would you ask them
And
move
then
to
they fill
Thursday?
up.
Or no? See it right now.
Do you want to go on the 18th in between our two meetings? Just looking at a date that happens to be clear on my calendar. Okay, let's call a special meeting for the 18th. You want to do it at 6?
Yeah.
6, all right? Okay. Mr.
And
Lucio,
we're
you
gonna
can
handle
make-
both.
take
We're
care
gonna
of
do
that,
both,
please.
right, you're saying? We will handle both evaluations on that time?
Yes, we'll
Okay.
have both evaluations at a time. We'll come together and figure out how to do this. From a technical viewpoint, I might need, Mr. Matt, I might need your help to, from a technical viewpoint, to make sure we get that set up, to do the evaluations. I know it's hard to hear. I've been having trouble hearing from that side of the room, too. We might need your help to set up the evaluation procedure so that we can make notes. We can look at theirs and then make notes and create our own. So I might need your help to help set that up. Okay, I actually might need that earlier so we can all put our comments down ahead of time. That might be a good idea.
It's been helpful.
So we need to figure that out if we can.
What will be your tentative start time for the meeting?
6,
6? Okay.
all right? So, Mr. Muccio, you'll make sure to publish that. You'll also make sure to get us your evaluation. Would be sure be nice if you guys use the same format.
Yep,
I know you don't.
Oh, we will. I'll talk to Matt, see what format he's using.
please use that one.
Yep.
Matt's is an Excel.
Yep.
Yeah, well, mine was based on the superintendent standards that OSBA provided.
Right, so you could do the same thing in the
For
same.
the treasurer, yeah.
Right.
In Excel, right?
No, it's not in Excel,
Not in
is it?
Excel, okay.
Yeah, mine was in Excel,
Yours
and then
in
I
Excel.
printed each page,
Okay.
based on each, there were 6 standards,
sorry.
and so I printed each one. I can also share the digital version of what I had with you if you prefer to have it.
That would be good. That's why I was bringing in
Okay.
Mr. Hardman there to make sure.
I'll do that right now.
we could-
And I'll mimic his, but just tweak it for the treasurer.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. Makes it a little easier for us.
I'll share it
when
with
we're
you
not-
as well.
When they're similar.
You can just share a blank one, you know. Whatever for you.
And then we'll plan on going over those on the 18th, and then sit down and figure out when we can go over them with you gentlemen after we're done with that. Okay. Anything else? I have a couple of things. Does anybody else have anything?
Yeah, so the 11th, I will not make a 6 o'clock meeting,
Okay.
but there's,
We'll miss you.
so, yeah.
I assume since you're gone for a week and a half, that that's vacation of some sort,
We'll
not
be in
business.
Europe.
What countries?
Ireland, England, France.
Very good. Very good, enjoy. Yeah, I'll be fine until August. I'll be missing, I'll miss the second meeting in August, but otherwise, I think I'll be around for most of the summer. Okay, I have a couple of things. First of all, and they're all Career Center related. We had the senior recognition presentations on May 7th and 8th. Mr. Young was there, Mr. Burek was there, who else was there? Scott DeTrey was there, all to help applaud our students as they were recognized. We had a number of students who were recognized as Student of the Year in their areas, which was very nice. But the really big one came at the end when Emily Sinicki was named the Cauga Valley Career Center Student of the Year, which was a very, very special, and we were thrilled to see that, see her name come up, and she was just, had no idea it was coming. She was really, really very, smiled from ear to ear.
What study is she in? What, do you remember?
Nursing.
Education.
Nursing.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah, so very nice. So that was a thrilling moment in that presentation after, what was it, about 2.5 hours between the reception and the presentations themselves. So, to follow along with that, and going back to the meeting that we had just before, at our previous board meeting, we had presentations from Transition to Work and the Sales and Service groups. And these are the students, most of whom are special needs, who are learning to do very basic skills for the most part. Being able to work in food service, how to wait tables, how to work in places like nursing homes, how to change bedding and those kinds of these are students who need that kind of instruction and that kind of support. And one of those students belongs to us, and that's Dominic Presott. And today, Jen Presott pulled me aside and commented to me about how thrilled she was to have Dominic, a student here, but we worked with Independence because they were able to better suit his needs. So he ended up going to Independence. But then when he got to the Career Center the last 2 years in sales and service, she said he really blossomed. That everybody who worked with him was just super impressed about how well he has done when he was part of that program. It's a need that really needs to be filled, and the Career Center, as well as us here in Cauga Heights, does an excellent job. And she was just head over heels enthused and thankful for everything that we as a district, Independence, and the Career Center has done for her son. And I just wanted to share her comments with everybody and to thank our administrators for the things that they do as well for those special needs type students. So, thank you very much. And then the last one for the Career Center is that our superintendent is up for the ACTE president or chairman or whatever. What's the right term? I can't remember the term.
For Mr. Mangus?
Mangus, yeah, Dave Mangus is up for ACTE. It's the group that handles the career centers, similar to OSBA for us. Okay?
Yes.
So it's their version of OSBA, and he is up for president this year. He's up for to be elected, and the election is going on now. So that speaks highly of that superintendent as well. So we're very, very fortunate, I think, to have him at Cauga Valley Career Center. he does an excellent job, as well as our treasurer, who does an excellent job, who's shared with Revere. That works out very well for both districts. It used to be Brexville too, but they moved on. No longer share their treasurer. So I think those are the things I had for the Career Center. So does anybody else have anything for board comments? Okay, hearing none, let's see if I don't skip something this time. Number 20 would be next. Future agenda items. 21, informational items. Should be noted, Board of Education members received their agenda several days prior to the actual meeting and have had considerable opportunity to study and so forth. Upcoming regular meetings, or board meetings, I should say, all in the Monterey Media Center. Wednesday, the 28th at 7. Regular meeting on June 11th. We have a work session at 6. We've now said we're going to have another work session on the 18th, and then a regular meeting on June 25th at 7. At this point, Section 22, I make a motion that we adjourn to executive session under revised code 121.22G for specific reasons, and I believe this one is G1, is that correct? To consider appointment, employment, dismissal, promotion, demotion, compensation of public employees, or descriptions of complaints, et cetera. For performance of official duties. May I have a second for that item?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dobbins. Any discussion? Hearing none, Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Souchaki?
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins?
Aye.
Mrs. Etter?
Aye.
Ms. Prouse? Mrs. Decker?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0 at 8:23, and we are adjourning into executive session. No action will be taken when we